Hey, how's it going, all? Welcome to the Left Fresh Podcast. Thank you all for jumping on. It's the middle of the week. Happy hump day, the proverbial hump. Uh, Hope everyone's having a good week so far. Hope everyone enjoyed the past weekend. Jumping on to give you your sports that you need. Got NFL cover, got NFL news, NBA talk, all that good stuff. Before everybody jumps on, I want everybody to, if you haven't already, to subscribe, like, comment, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. Appreciate all the support and interaction I've been getting on the show so far. Been a little bit over a month in, and I definitely appreciate all the, like I said, all the engagement and all the support. Thank you all. But yeah, without further delay, let's jump into it, man. NFL offseason is pretty much started. We're in the salary dumping, cutting, um, franchising, re-sign extension business. A lot of moves around the league since the season has ended. We got a couple of pretty good moves, pretty decent moves. But I think what we're looking forward is to more further moves down the line. Most importantly, at the most important position, the quarterback position. You see around the league, there's a lot of teams now after seeing Seattle win it all with Sam Darnold. Um, Come to the conclusion that hey, elite quarterbacks are hard to come by, and see now that after seeing Seattle win with Sam Darnold, say, hey, maybe there's a couple of other these quarterbacks in the carousel every season or free agency that you know we can add to our roster and we can have our own Sam Darnold, basically our own game manager, our own starting level quarterback that can help us, you know, get us over the top. There's a couple of teams in the NFL got good quality cores around them and just a quarterback away and don't necessarily need a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson to get them there. So, you know, with those quarterbacks in rarity and scarcity anyway, you know, probably the next step down is to look for a quarterback in rotation that they can move around or help them get them over the top or put them in the right system to see that, you know, hey, who can get us there? A couple of names you could throw around, but we'll get to that in a second. You also see other skill positions on the move. Dolphins released Tyreek Hill. There's a lot of questioning about where he can end up at. I think you can kind of end the Kansas City Chiefs reunion. I know everyone wants to see him end up in Buffalo. A team that can use a good wide receiver, but Tyreek Hill's value at his age and coming off an injury that he's coming off of, and he's probably not even going to be able to start at the beginning of the season anyway. It's going to be tough to kind of find a place for him to end up at, especially or any place that's going to give him any type of instant, you know, starting or wide receiver one type of thing. Um, Also, you see the Seattle Seahawks are in limbo by probably moving on from Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker III. He had a great Super Bowl run, had a great season. At the same time, the salary cap is the salary cap. Um, Seattle has other priority positions they want to bring back. They got a young defense that has to get paid. Usually the running back is usually the usually the first casualty when it comes to making those type of cuts. So, although he had a great run in Seattle, it's probably going to be the end there. I can see Seattle probably taking a running back in the later rounds of the draft in the upcoming draft in April. So, we can look forward to that. As far as most important position, quarterback. We already seen the Falcons have kind of parted ways with Kirk Cousins. We haven't really solidified any type of moving forward with Michael Penix, although they're still keeping him. He's still injured and he's going to be out for an extended period of time as well. But there are other quarterbacks out there, and the Falcons are just one of many other teams that are looking to see if the quarterback position can get them over the top. You look at teams like the Colts; they're wondering about bringing back, Daniel Jones type of extension to pay him. He had a great start to the season, struggled a little bit, then caught that nasty Achilles injury. So not sure what that kind of does in this situation for him and the Colts, or he's still probably one of the more desired um, quarterbacks out there in the carousel that teams will be looking for as well. Like I said, a lot of teams are just looking for a game manager, not necessarily needing an elite quarterback. So Daniel Jones, um, Yeah, a lot of different positions out there, but quarterback position most important. What's going on, Ron? Man, appreciate you jumping on, bro. Yeah, getting rid of Algiers will be a mistake. Yeah, it's tough to get rid of a two back system like that, and coming back with a quarter, and then coming in with a quarterback situation, you're not sure about Penix, and Kirk is pretty much gone, and you know it's going to be interesting to see what the Falcons do at quarterback. That's one of those one of those teams that they kind of got a lot of other pieces in place already, just kind of need a quarterback, and then this draft class is not doing anybody any favors either. It's not like the second year quarterbacks year where you had 4 or 5 quarterbacks you can pick in the first round. Now this draft, you got Mendoza who's probably going number one. You got Ty Simpson, who maybe a reach as a first round quarterback. So I mean, you kind of just stuck as far as what quarterbacks to really go for. You really have to just kind of go to the Paris. You have to go to the carousel to get your QB. Yeah, the Falcons only need to touch the quarter QB1 position. That's it. Yeah, I mean because you got Kirk, and I mean Kirk is gone, and then you got Penix, and Penix is out for an extensive period of time, and you know you got Stefanski in there. Stefanski's gonna want a quarterback that can play on the center. You know, especially with Bijan, you got to have a quarterback that can play on the center. And so, I mean, even with Penix rehabbing and coming back, there's still that looming question of whether he can make it work under center as a QB instead of just playing in the shotgun all the time. Um, I think that's yeah. I mean, and then as far as what else is out there, I mean, it's an interesting carousel because you do have a variety of different situations, but some of these are pretty much not as cut and dry as it seems. But one situation is Miami Dolphins situation with starting quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Um, they may trade him, may release him. I don't know how much of the cap hit they're trying to take, but he's a quarterback. That many are eyeing his situation right. Many teams are eyeing his situation right now. You got teams like Minnesota. You got teams like the Falcons. You got teams, you know, like the Colts. I mean, we're not really set in stone that they're coming back with Daniel Jones either. I mean, he's coming off an Achilles tear. I know Tua's got injury history as well, but I mean, different systems just need a game managing quarterback. Um, I know out in San Francisco they're talking about Mac Jones, and Mac Jones is probably not going to be traded. However, because San Francisco says, "Hey, we like our backup quarterback situation." I'm pretty sure every team would like to have backup quarterbacks until the right trade package is offered. If Minnesota offers the right amount, offers a first, or if another team that definitely needs a quarterback, that desperately needs a quarterback, might offer a first. Um, Another long shot situation is the contract negotiation with Lamar Jackson. Um, Not saying that he most likely won't get extended in Baltimore. I most likely see him being extended in Baltimore, but a lot of people saying monitor the situation just in case it could possibly lead to a trade or anything like that. I don't see that happening most likely. Um, but I do think that Baltimore has to make some changes. Um, I'm not necessarily sure if quarterbacks the change are going to make, but a lot of people are saying there's a lot of money tied into Lamar Jackson. That's kind of the catch with having an elite quarterback. When you have an elite quarterback, you have to pay him elite money, which kind of can count against the cap. Um, Patrick Mahomes took a restructure took a restructuring for his contract in order to free up 43 million in cap space for the Kansas City Chiefs. So it'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs retool. Um, like I said, a lot of people rumored Tyreek Hill to make a reunion there. I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's likely. It's just I think with Rasheed Rice and Tyreek Hill already, I don't think that combination in that room kind of makes sense. So, yeah, but another quarterback that a lot of teams are eyeing that a lot of pundits are also looking at as well is the Malik Willis situation. Backup quarterback in Green Bay for Jordan Love. Pardon me. Yeah, Malik Willis performed well in a couple of games he started. Had a lot of teams looking, like I said. he doesn't necessarily have to show elite, just show starter in a league where teams are even looking for. You see starters going down anyway. I mean, teams need good backups as well. So I mean, the race in arms for quarterback is like, I can see why the 49ers say they're not trading Mac Jones. I mean, it's gonna take a really good package to get Mac Jones away from San Francisco because Brock Purdy's injury prone, and the way quarterbacks went down this past season, a lot of teams don't really want to shore up a good backup quarterback just as much as they can get a decent starter quarterback. So yeah, a lot of teams really want to shore up a quarterback room if they don't have a steady quarterback situation. So it's definitely a race in arms for quarterback. Yeah, Raw, you say you like Willis and ATL. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he can manage a game. I mean, he's got an arm. He's got a strong arm. I mean, we've seen a couple of reps in Tennessee. Um, I don't think Tennessee really gave him much to develop with, but I mean, you put him in Atlanta with the weapons that Atlanta have in place. Um, he's mobile. He's a he got a nice size to him as well as far as quarterback. He's not a small quarterback. Yeah, Malik Willis is a highly desirable backup quarterback situation that many teams wouldn't mind reaching for a starter. I mean, he's definitely somebody that a team that would like to take a chance on. The highlight of the quarterback carousel is in the Arizona situation with Kyler Murray. Um, Kyler, you know, a lot of flag. He's a smaller quarterback, and at this point, you're correct. We just need a game manager. Yeah, like I said, a lot of teams are really, kind of not necessarily looking for the next Mahomes at this point. It doesn't look like it's coming this year. So a lot of teams are just looking for a good game managing quarterback. You know what I mean? So yeah, like Kyler Murray, you know, this was a player that was drafted number one to be the savior in Arizona. Um, Kind of almost got them to the playoff. I mean, got them to a playoff game. Had he worked with Kingsbury when Kingsbury's the head coach. Kind of hasn't really worked out in the last couple of games in Arizona. This past season, he's been benched. Kind of odd to do that for a quarterback that you actually look towards trading. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of lowering his trade value doing that. But I mean, at the same time, this team's out here looking for a quarterback, and I've heard different scenarios like the Jets. You know, different teams out here that can use a quarterback. If Miami moves on from Tua, I'm not sure if they want to pick up Kyler Murray, but I mean, you never know how this quarterback carousel is going to spin because, you know, like I said, most teams are looking just for a game manager, somebody that can just manage drives for them. Not necessarily looking for somebody that'll get them over the top. And if they can sign a quarterback to a decent salary, that's the key factor as well. Signing a quarterback to an agreeable, team friendly deal so they can build around these quarterbacks. They're not expected to elevate as much. Like I said, Kyler Murray was drafted and extended to be the savior of the Arizona Cardinals. The next situation he's going to, I mean, I doubt that he's going to be expected to actually save a franchise. I think he's just more or less, at this, just trying to find a Benz around him he can't wreck. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting off-season start. Like I said, a couple players got cut to manage salaries. As you mentioned, Ron, Algiers got cut. Um, Quarterbacks are going to continue to be on the move. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to be following along. Like I said, it's just a start, especially getting towards the draft and looking at towards the this draft class. Like I said, not a strong quarterback draft class at all. Definitely going to be some receivers. Definitely going to be some linemen, some edge rushers, which a lot of teams can use an edge rusher as well. But yeah, I'll be back at everyone next week with the mock drafts, even further to look into it. Um, NFL coverage just kind of light, kind of good start though. Kind of light right now. It's kind of lightening up. So be back at it next week with that. Yeah, moving on to the NBA. And before we do that, if you just jumped on, I want to ask you to like, subscribe, comment. Thank you all for jumping on and engaging with the Left Fresh podcast. I'm going to switch gears over into the NBA. Those who saw this past weekend saw the All Star weekend. Um, my personal opinion, it was an event. I think, it was better than last season. I think it might have been better than the last two seasons. I think the NBA did a good effort in trying to shake up the format. But what I liked the most was seeing the effort. I liked seeing younger players come out there with excitement, happy to be there, not just taking a moment for granted and going out there and at least making an effort to put on a good show. I think it was I think it was kind of like, you know, it always seems like it takes a step forward, but then, you just try to make sure that it doesn't take a step back. Yeah, it was good. It's Tennessee, yeah, man. All-Star weekend ain't the same no more. Yeah, and I think it feels like it's trying to get back to it, but at the same time, it's like, it's like a baby step kind of getting back to what it was, and I think a lot of it was watching this weekend was kind of like still getting used to the changing of the guard. Watching legendary players get older and get towards their last All-Star game while the newer All-Stars start to emerge and the younger names start making names for themselves. It's kind of like, that transition period when Jordan retired. And, yeah, I remember a time when people used to like, oh man, we were gonna go out. It's kind of like a where do we go from here without Jordan? But then we had Kobe Bryant and Iverson and Kevin Garnett and Tracy McGrady and all the different young names coming up too. So it's like it's gonna take a baby step to kind of appreciate what we had because, like I said, when we look back at that 2001 All Star game and we looked at it how great it was and one of the greatest All Star games ever and everything like that, back then people were looking at the NBA like, oh man, we would go from here when Jordan's gone. You know what I mean? Even though we had a great All Star game, looking back at it in hindsight. So I'm not sure if this is going to be an all time great to remember, but at the same time, you know, um, I think the league's going to be in a good place in the long run. Yeah, I like showcasing the young stars too. That was one of my favorite events this All Star Weekend. Was the Rising Stars was the rookies and sophomores game and everything like that. I liked how T Mac, Team Austin Rivers, Team Vince and Team Mello put together their teams and they put on a good show. You see DJ Edgecombe won the Rising Stars MVP. He put on a great performance. Had two game winners in his games. Like a lot of the young talent that showed up. Con Canepo was great. Wish Cooper Flag could have played. I mean, I think that would have been a great addition to the showcase. Part of the drawback of this weekend was not having some stars in it, but I mean, of course, you're not going to have every star in it. But yeah, definitely BJ Edgecombe put on a good show. Um, I liked Dylan Harper. Dylan Harper put on a great show as well. Rookie, real tough. I mean, these rookies are not backing down from anybody. You know what I mean? Yeah, they definitely got to young rookie crop is going to be great for a couple years, and then you got another rookie crop coming in next year that's projected to be even better. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing these young players over the next course of seasons. Um, Looking at the 3-point shootout. How about Dame Dash coming back from an Achilles tear and haven't played a game all season, but won his third NBA shootout. He joined Larry Bird and I believe it was Craig Hodges. I believe it was. Yeah, they had three NBA shootout championships. Yeah, Dame got hot, put on the show, took it to the final round with Devin Booker. They went shot for shot. Devin Booker just missed it, just missed that 30 that Dame Dollar put up. And I mean, it was a great performance. You know, coming back, real, feel good story. You know what I'm saying? Dame, out with an Achilles tear, comes back and claims another trophy. So yeah, that was a high note. I like the way the first round started off. Con Canepples had to put on a good performance as well. I was impressed with his showing for a rookie, on a big stage like that as well. Like I said, he's going to be a sharpshooter for a while too. I expect him to be in a couple more 3-point shootouts. Con Caneppel. Yeah, yeah, Nate, man. Yeah, I was kind of feeling the same way. The slam dunk contest. Congrats to Keshawn Johnson and everything. Yeah, Jace Richardson in it. They had Carter Bryan. They had Jackson Hayes in it. And I mean, no disrespect, but you could tell by the entrance into the slam dunk contest that it was kind of like a where do we go from here as well with the slam dunk contest. You know what I mean? It was like, oh man, it was like the great slam dunk contest, and there's so far in between as far as a great slam dunk contest. You know what I mean? I've seen people, um, yeah, they might have to start getting some YouTube dunkers. But I mean, I always thought that the dunk contest is not really an every year thing. I mean, if you look back in history, the dunk contest has kind of been, um, yo, yeah, it was decent, but still not the same. Maybe they should do a showcase of a contest. Yeah, because if we all remember the dunk contest got canceled after 1997, and it didn't come back until Vince Carter brought it back in 2000. I don't think I think it has a stale years like all throughout the history of the slam dunk contest. And then even, we really think about the greatest slam dunk contest ever. We think about, the Jordan versus Dominique. We think about Vince Carter, think about Levine versus Aaron Gordon. And then if you really follow the slam dunk contest, you probably look at Desmond Mason, or you look at Desmond Mason and Jason Richardson and everything like that. You see great duels, or you see great showcases. Even with Matt McClung gone, I mean, I don't have to call Matt McClung back for another slam dunk contest or nothing, or maybe get some YouTube dunkers or whatever. But um, I keep seeing everywhere that the league is short on star power. I'm like, a lot of guys made their names in the slam dunk contest. We just need creativity. I mean, Matt McClung put on a pretty good slam dunk contest one of those 3 years. I mean, at least one or two of those 3 years. We just need somebody with some creativity. Um, the ones we seen this past weekend, it was like, I think we've either seen it before, some variation of it. Took too many attempts to do it. That was another point too as well. It took too many times to pull off some of the dunks. And I mean, and for those dunks, I mean, it wasn't the most creative ones that we've ever seen. So, you know, I think the dunk contest is probably the most sour point of the All-Star weekend. I mean, I think there's pretty much gripes across the board, but I think the slam dunk contest is probably the one that took the most heat. Um, as it should. I mean, I think everybody kind of had the stale face when they when they saw the slam dunk contest. So, you know, maybe and I'm not sure if, like I said, adding maybe star power can add to it. But I mean, I think anybody that can put on a good show as far as creativity is concerned, I think can put a little more ignition into it. But yeah, and then last but not least, the actual All Star Game weekend, the new format. A lot of people were in objection to, or just was kind of real cynical about. I think it came together pretty well. I think there was some effort put in there, so we actually saw a pretty good All Star game. Like I said, still doesn't quite tickle the nostalgia that we're used to, but it was a good step forward. I would say, like Ant said, I think Victor kind of set the tone. Um, I like the dynamic of putting as many veteran stars on one team as many young stars on another team. I think that created a nice dynamic to the All Star game as well. Um, the world team, I guess, didn't really didn't live up to the billing because you didn't have Giannis, you didn't have SGA, Luca, and Jokic played very minimal minutes. So, you know, we kind of like looked at it like, oh man, we thought the world was going to do something. Well, yeah, we thought most of the world was going to play leading up to it, but we ended up with really one of the five top players in the NBA when all of the MVPs and Luca didn't even barely play. So that was kind of the other sour gripe was that we kind of missed the whole essence of USA versus the world, but we did get to see uh, the younger NBA stars versus the more veteran NBA stars. And Ant Man won the most valuable player, won the Kobe Bryant All Star Game trophy. He had a pretty good, solid team as well as full of young players. I was impressed with the showing that Jaden Duran put up. I was impressed with. Um, I like you know, the energy the young players brought. I also like that one third quarter that third game Kawhi Leonard. I mean, 31 points in there. He was going in a whole different orbit right there. I mean, shout out to Kawhi because he wasn't even initially selected for the All Star game. He came out there and showed out. And Raw, what you say? Yeah, the dunk contest lacked enthusiasm. Hey, hey, Kashawn Johnson was just dancing. Oh man, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of dance, a lot of I think he put a little more showmanship, put more showmanship into the dancing than the actual dunks. I mean, it was like, it was cool at first, and it was like every single dunk, and it was like, you know, it was like one of the dunks was like a pretty basic one, and it was like it's all dancing for, but just go ahead, get to the back of the line, let the next person do it. Yeah, I was definitely like on the same instance, like, yeah, I mean, you know, congrats for winning and everything, but it was a pretty stale dunking contest. I don't think it was a I don't think every dunk was a dancing equation. He was nervous. Hey, I mean, I get it. What? Yeah, I guess people do nervous things when I mean, yeah, I guess dancing is a nervous action. But congrats to him anyway. Like I said, I mean, he did. Somebody had to win the dance. I mean, the dunk contest and the dance contest. But yeah, yeah, Kawhi went off. Yeah, Kawhi went into a different bag. I mean, he was taking the young boys to school. I mean, taking to everybody. I mean, mid range, three 3 point. I mean, I don't know what happened to Kawhi from I don't know around Christmas or something. Kawhi Leonard just been going off. I mean, the regular season, All Star game. I mean, he's just playing. I'm not sure. He must be under. I mean, I know I know his contract and everything was under investigation, but he's earning it now. But yeah, I mean, it was a good All Star, game actually. I mean, like I said, with the exception of most of the big names of the international team not even playing or playing minimal minutes. I mean, it was a pretty good All Star game. Though I liked it. I mean, I like the energy. And Kawhi's consistency. I mean, the biggest problem with Kawhi is that he's usually hurt. You kind of get nervous when he's playing as well because you kind of cringing hoping that he doesn't get hurt. I mean, that's kind of one of one of my biggest concerns for him. And I mean, he's kind of missed most of the games he's played as a Clipper. So I mean, there's a natural tentativeness when he plays that he's kind of fell under the same injury prone label as AD, as Anthony Davis and Embiid. He's always, typically hurt. But when he's on the court, I mean, there's no question that he's out there, he's out there pretty much balling. I mean, and you're kind of getting a reminder that when he is healthy, that's kind of where it is with him. You know what I mean? And it's like, um, now the Clippers have traded Zubac and they traded the other best player, Harden and Zubac. I mean, they traded his best teammates. I mean, he's definitely in what they call Kawhi Borg mode and everything like that. Just straight robotic, just giving people buckets. But yeah, um, overall All Star game format. I mean, they got things to improve on. Um, but I think it's taking steps in the right direction. I don't think they should change too much more, along with a lot of other things in the NBA. I'm gonna get to that in a second as well. As we're getting ready to preview the second half of the season. Um, as we are, the games start back up tomorrow. Just want to show everybody what the standings look like as we resume from the All Star break. You got the Pistons at the top of the league with 40 wins, 13 losses. You see the Celtics and the Knicks and the Cavaliers now that they acquired James Harden. Um, they're all at 30 wins or above. And then you see the Raptors and Sixers as well. So the top six teams. It's pretty interesting dynamic. Um, Looking at, you know, Pistons look tough. I mean, they're a gritty team. A lot of people wonder, kind of offense do they have outside of Cade? But I mean, Cade is definitely a closer type of player. Got shooters around him, got some gritty workers. I mean, but it is interesting to see what they're gonna be able to do towards the end of the season, and most importantly, in the playoffs where it counts. My Knicks look like they're in the mix. This looks like now or never year type of year. This is the kind of the best they've kind of looked in a while. Since I mean last year, I mean moving on from Thibodeau, they've kind of figured it out and looks like they're ready for a run. Celtics are there. I'm not sure if they're trying to bring Jason Tatum back. I think a lot of people are trying to advise against it. I wouldn't rush him back either. He's got a big contract, so rushing him back to aggravate anything is especially when they're playing this well with Jalen Brown. I would probably just keep it the way it is and just run with it. Like I said, the Cavaliers made a move for James Harden. These top four teams, they're all in it. That's the four teams in the mix. I'm not sure if the Raptors or Sixers can shake things up. That Magic team, I'm not sure if there's any Magic fans on the chat. Probably isn't, but if there are, Paolo Banchero, he is kind of having a regression year. They kind of had the same record like for the last 3 seasons, and him and Franz Wagner, you know, I think a lot of teams. I think the Magic is kind of looking at them, at this point, like, or should be looking at them like, are we at the ceiling with that pairing? The Miami Heat playoff team, but you got Charlotte rising up on them. Charlotte was hot coming into the All Star break. You know what I mean? They had the big fight with Detroit and the suspensions and everything like that. But Charlotte was one of the best teams starting off the new year. coming off the All-Star break. I wanna see how they pick up momentum, see if they can get into that play-in. I mean, they're basically in the play-in now, but I mean, they could possibly move into the higher up into that play-in spot. Yeah, Ron, thanks, man. The Knicks are looking good right now. A lot of question marks though if Cat and Jalen Brunson are the duo to get it done, but this is about as good time as any. I like the trade that we made for Alvarado. Grand Theft Alvarado's our backup point guard now. He brings a lot of hustle and defense. We got Soshan from the San Antonio Spurs. Yeah, so I mean, I think we got some good role players, some dirty work guys. We got we're bringing the defense back a little bit. I think this is probably as good a year. Like I said, I'm not sleeping on Boston or Detroit. Uh, James Harden in Cleveland. I know a lot of people are going to question what they can do when it actually comes to playoff time, but he's probably going to lift them up in the standings a little bit as well. So I expect them to stay in that top four. I do think the Cavs going to have home court advantage going into the playoffs because of the Harden trade. Now what they'll do with it, and that remains to be seen. But I do think that Harden trade has got them pushed them up, accelerated them as far as saving their season. Um, like I said, they kind of separated them from, they was in the sixth seed at one point, the seventh seed when they got Harden. Now they kind of edged their way up. So that's interesting. Um, you look down at the bottom of the standings. Oof. Yeah. Pacers, Wizards. Pacers got fined for not necessarily tanking, but got fined for roster manipulation in an effort to tank. You can see the bottom three teams, Nets, Pacers, Wizards, they'll be in the lottery trying to get in on this deep draft class that's coming in. That's going to be interesting, That's going to be interesting towards the offseason. I'm always looking forward to the draft lottery because it never goes the way everybody expects it to go. The Milwaukee Bucks, interesting situation with Giannis. Um, they didn't move him by the trade deadline. Probably not going to play the rest of the season. Probably will sit him down, relax him as they should. I'm not sure if they're going to try to play their way back into to the Eastern Conference. So I'm expecting them to tank quietly as well. I expect Giannis to sit. And as far as the offseason go, I mean, he's going into a contract year. So I mean, a lot of people saying, "Oh, Milwaukee's not going to trade him." I mean, he may end up staying in Milwaukee if he doesn't get moved. Because I mean, at this point, it's smarter for both sides for him to move, unless he isn't going to move. Um, I see all these, you know, the trade packages you get for Giannis. I don't know what they keep holding out for. Yeah, and that's the thing. He already has a super max. So I mean, is he going to stay in Milwaukee, get extended, and traded? Because he keeps saying he wants the max, but he also wants to win. He's already got the super max. So I mean, he's getting 58 million next year. That's going to get traded if he wants to be traded. And wherever team he ends up with is going to take a lot of depth to get him. So it's going to be tough to move a superstar in the NBA in this day and age in this CBA without it cutting into your depth. I mean, who's going to make a move for Giannis and they actually can make a dent against the teams with like the Detroits and the Celtics and the Knicks who actually have depth? You know what I mean? And it's like, everybody wants to trade for Giannis, supposed to put him with their star. But if you put two stars together, 9 times out of 10, the team's not going to have depth. Which leads me over to the West, because most of the teams that want to trade for Giannis outside of Miami, which pretty much has nothing to bring Giannis into, is the West. And you look at the West, see the Thunder at 42-14, see the Spurs. These are young teams that are deep and athletic and don't really need to trade for a superstar. Even though they got the collateral, they got the trade package available for a player like Giannis. What's the purpose of trading for Giannis? They don't really need a Giannis. So, you know, you can pretty much take them out the running. The Denver Nuggets just allocated some of their depth by trading Michael Porter Jr. They pretty much got enough depth around Jokic and Jamal Murray where, you see the Houston Rockets, they need a point guard. You got Kevin Durant. That situation out there with Sengun, you know, those teams already have younger teams at the top. Most of the teams at the top are already younger. Um, and of course you see the Lakers. The Lakers and the Warriors are kind of in the same situation. They're trying to just build around the stars. Like I said, you already seen the Warriors try to make a deal for Giannis that fell through. Um, Offseason rumors that the Lakers are trying to make a move for Giannis as well. Um, Laker general manager Rob Pelinka is pretty much under scrutiny at this point. I've said it since last year before the Luka trade. That Luka trade really saved Rob Pelinka because he had Anthony Davis and LeBron and didn't know what to do to get them better. And you know, Nico Harrison called him in the middle of the night. It's like, I got Luca for you. And that kind of like just saved his job. And now that, Nico's no longer employed by the Mavericks and the Lakers have Luca, LeBron is pretty much not sure if he's leaving or not sure if he's coming back under a cheaper deal next season. But you cannot bank on just, making a trade for Luca. I mean, not Luka. If you not make a trade for Giannis, you making a trade for Giannis, you got to think what package can you offer the Milwaukee Bucks that Golden State didn't offer. You know what I mean? And it's like I don't see how you're going to be able to put any depth around them. You got Giannis, you got Luca. What other salaries can you? I mean, can you really afford? You got two max salary players, and then you got to worry about you got to worry about depth because you got to worry about injuries. You can't just put everything on two stars. So it's gonna be interesting to see how teams get better in that middle of the pack because it looks like teams like the Thunder, the Spurs, the Nuggets. I don't think anybody's gonna in break in front of them. Not sure how anybody's gonna get in front of them even for next season. Um, that's why a lot of these teams at the bottom, you see the Mavs, they sat Kyrie down. You see the Kings, they s- you know Zach Levine and Demontis Sabonis is getting surgery. You know what I mean? And that's where the conversation of tanking comes in at. You know, you're not getting ahead of teams that built through the draft, hit on draft picks, and lock their players up for the next couple of seasons. The NBA is a baby step league. And when you see, all these media personalities and analysts online talking about, tanking and everything like that. And then I heard certain people speak out and say there's really nothing you can do about tanking, and I agree. That's kind of what I said on the last episode, on episode last week, on episode 8, where I was saying, hey, you know, there's no solution that's really better than what we have in place now. I mean, you can penalize teams for tanking. I mean, doing egregious acts like one Utah did, actually sitting starters that can actually play. I don't have a problem with those fines. Some people thought the penalty should be harsher. I'm like, how much harsher can it be? I mean, number one, Utah actually won that game. The game they got fined for tanking, they won. They also don't look in position to win a lot of games, and it wasn't purposely either. I mean, some of these teams are just bad, and the only way for them to get better is to just go through, take their lumps and lose. I mean, there's egregious cases of tanking which can get cracked down on. I don't know if people remember Philadelphia's process in tanking for like 5 or 6 years straight to get Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, but you know, and their general manager, Hinkie at the time got let go, but you ended up with Joel Embiid and you ended up with Ben Simmons. I mean, two guys that really didn't. Um, I wouldn't say lead to anything promising in Philadelphia, but they got an MVP player out of Embiid, and Ben Simmons gave you all NBA season before everything broke apart. And you ended up with high picks. What you do with them is another thing, and which leads me to the next point about what to do about tanking is because that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to do anything with the pick because one thing is the draft lottery is found the way the way it is the way it is. I think the draft lottery serves its purpose just fine. Teams that have the worst record don't always get the number one pick. Very rarely do get the number one pick. Um, I know a lot of times people say, "Oh, well, teams that trade away their best pick, their best player get the number one pick and everything like that." That's point out all the conspiracies and everything. But yeah, but you overlook all the teams that traded away their best player and didn't get the number one pick. I mean, OKC traded away Westbrook and didn't get the number one pick. At the end of the day, the draft lottery is unpredictable and it kind of discourages tanking. So, it should discourage tanking. But I mean, teams are going to tank just for the best opportunity of it because you got to there's no future in being middle of the pack. There's no future in being a team like the Warriors, being a team like the Lakers. You got, a star on his last leg, and you're in the middle of the pack. You don't have a way in this CBA to get better. The NBA's primary focus was looking at parity. Um, it's kind of hard to get better in a league that promotes parity without building through the draft, and it's hard to not to build through the draft without starting off in the lottery, especially if you have a depleted roster. I mean, you look at teams like the Pelicans, you look at teams like the Kings, you look at teams like the Mavericks. I mean, the Grizzlies. These teams have no way of getting better. There's no trade that's going to change them better. I mean, they got young players, and they just got to keep drafting and keep hitting on picks. And speaking on hitting on picks, the idea of tanking is to get in line to get players like these. Okay, that's the whole idea. You build through the draft. You don't get superstar caliber players in free agency. LeBron doesn't take his talents to such and such only but so many years. He played the last 6 years in LA. He played 4 years in Cleveland. It takes that long for a superstar to become an unrestricted free agent, or Kevin Durant or somebody like that, or somebody to be available. You know, if you run your franchise based on the availability of those type of players as veterans, bigger contracts later on in their career, then you're not going to get very far. You have to build through the draft. Um, these teams, look at the jerseys these players are wearing. Okay, Ant, Ant Edwards was on a bad team that was probably tanking. Okay, Kay Cunningham was on a bad team that was definitely tanking. Okay, Orlando Banchero, yeah, the Magic were most likely tanking. The Spurs were most likely tanking. The Mavericks were most likely tanking. Okay, these players do not sit around in the end of the first round. I mean, yeah, you can get a steal in the second round. You can get a steal in the late first round, or maybe you can get a Giannis or a Jokic, somebody who developed that nobody saw coming. But most likely, your best players in the league are at the top of the draft. So, I mean, you know, you can fault teams for tanking, but a lot of times they're not. Sometimes it's not even tanking. Some teams are just bad. You know what I mean? Some teams are just really bad. You can't really stop teams from being bad. And then what do you do now if you tell players, hey, go ahead and take that surgery. We're not playing for anything this year. Go ahead, heal up. Go ahead, rest up. You know, that's the most logical, ethical way to tank right there. And I mean, I hate to say that there's an ethical way to tank, but yeah, let's not live in, I don't live in fairy tales. Oh, wrong. Yeah. What I think about CJ McCollum going to the Hawks. Um, that was just to make a salary move. That was just to make a salary lineup to get rid of Trey. I don't really see CJ. I think he's an aspiring salary as well. I don't think he'll be coming back to the Hawks next season. Um, this is just kind of just formality to go through the season. Like I said, you just had to make the salaries lined up to get Trey. I think the Hawks are depending on their draft position because with the Pelicans pick, you can end up with a top three pick. You can end up with Darren Peterson. You can end up with AJ DeBancer. You can end up with Cameron Boozer. You can end up with Caleb Wilson. But even in that event that you don't end up with a top four, top five pick, you can still get a Kingston Flemings. You can still get a Darius Acuff. You can still get, one of those Mikael Brown Jr. Those are 3 point guards you can replace Trey Young with. So I think the Hawks was actually very smart in getting rid of Trey this year, if depending on what they do in this draft. A lot of people can be like, well, yeah, maybe getting rid of Trey was the right move, depending on what the Hawks do with this pick. But yeah, I think CJ McCullough was just collateral, um, kind of formality to go through the season with him. And I think, he'll serve a purpose for, the rest of the season, but I think they'll just part ways with him after that. I mean, I think what the Hawks are looking for most importantly is cap room. So yeah, I think, CJ, just temporary. But yeah, I mean, this is why teams tank. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not even like I said. Sometimes it may not even be the whole season. It's not like teams are just tanking every single loss they had. I mean, sometimes teams go out there and play. And another thing people need to stop panicking is because second half of the season, you start seeing all type of bad teams start pulling together wins. You start seeing bad teams go on winning streaks and stuff like that. Um, every single season, every season, every second half of the season is one of those bad teams that start looking a little bit better. Like Charlotte was supposed to have been tanking at the beginning of the season. Look like so much for that. Um, but yeah, I don't like to preoccupy my time with bad teams being bad. I don't expect anything more than bad teams being bad. I mean, like I said, why they're being bad. I mean, listen, it's not guaranteed they're going to get the number one pick. I mean, we've seen teams tank and end up with pick number 5. So it's like You know, it is what it is. Um, Before I go off in the final which leads to the final subject. Teams tank because they want to get that, that superstar player, especially when there's a good prospect, especially when there's a deep draft coming up like this particular draft class. Last year's draft class had Cooper Flag in it. You know, they didn't have Zachary Risachet in the shot because that draft class wasn't considered as strong. So, but yeah, I just want to let you know this wasn't a these weren't consecutive years because in between Wimby and Cooper Flag, you had Zachary Risachet. you know, um, Paolo Banchero's another one. Like I said, he's kind of regressed this season. A lot of people are not sure whether he's going to be able to make that leap into that superstar level. But then you also see Ant Man, you see Kay Cunningham. You know, 4 out of 5 of these players are looked at as the next could be next possible upcoming superstars in the NBA. Which leads a good question is like, I keep seeing a lot of on these a lot of these media outlets too, like who's the next face of the NBA? And I've always lived by we gotta let it play out. You know, I think, Magic Johnson was a legit face of the NBA. You're right, saved the NBA. I don't think nobody knew in 1980 the extent of which Magic Johnson would save the NBA. I think he was a great kid coming out of college that a lot of people thought he was going to be a great player in the NBA. And most importantly, what builds stars is rivalries. You know what I mean? He played Bird in college, and the rivalry transcended into the NBA, and that led to a lot of audience investment. We gotta let these young players come into the NBA, establish their names, and give us some good competitive basketball, and then we can start looking at who's the faces of the NBA. You know, one of the throughout history, even if we didn't have a face of the NBA, we had some sort of rivalry. We had faces of the NBA. You had Russell, you had Chamberlain, that was the rivalry. The 70s kind of had an ABA merger, but you had like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Dr. J. In the 80s, Magic and Bird. Mike was the man in the 90s, but there was a couple other rivalries in there that made the NBA interesting too. You had a lot of big men who had great rivalries back then too. Teams had rivalries. Um, this NBA is a little different because it aims for parity. There's no dynasties in it. Therefore, it's kind of hard to have a household name or a villain or superhero type of player that everybody cheers for or cheers against. You're still kind of figuring it out. And then before you can even get invested in a player, there's a new team in there every single year now. So it's like we haven't had a consistent champion to really build that name. Like even when Nikola Jokic, I mean, many people will say he's the best player in the NBA. We've only seen him in one NBA Finals, and then you see Giannis as a top player, you see Luka as a top player. They've all been to one final. We're not seeing them consistently go to battle with particular opponents every single year, or it's still probably too early. But you know, the NBA is at a place right now. Is like I said, it's that changing of the guard, and um, we don't have a face of the NBA at this point, and that's perfectly fine. Right now we're still getting ready to say goodbye to the faces that we still have, which is LeBron, KD, Steph. That era. We're still saying bye to them, so we don't really know where we're at with it. But we do know that we got some new stars in the league, and the league is in good hands. I've seen enough basketball throughout history to know that what we thought it was didn't turn out to be what we didn't turn out to be, and some things just turned out even better. Like if people said Kobe Bryant would have the career that he had, being drafted 13th, playing behind Eddie Jones, nobody saw that coming. When Kevin Garnett came out of high school, nobody thought Kevin Garnett was going to be the Hall of Fame legend that he is. So I mean, I think with this younger generation here, we see talent, but it's a matter of we got to let it play out as well. And like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing the next new season of new talent coming in. This rookie class is great. I think the NBA is in really good shape going into the second half of the season. And I think going forward, like I said, I'll be looking forward to the draft lottery. I'll be looking forward to all type of upcoming, especially the end of the season. See how teams finish down the stretch, um, playoffs, seeing which team is going to make that leap. We haven't had a repeat champion We had different teams coming out of conferences almost every season. So I mean, it's definitely gonna be interesting. Kind of gives like a March Madness type of feel in the NBA, but it's like I think it's kind of hard for the casual fan to keep invested in something that's always changing every single year. But I think with time, people will get used to it and get used to the spontaneity of it. You know how spontaneous the season can be or the playoffs can be at a certain point. But yeah, that's my time for tonight. And I appreciate you all jumping on with me, giving me good engagement, good conversation. I appreciate you all. You can find me on Instagram at This Is Left Fresh. You can find me on TikTok at This Is Left Fresh. You can find me on X as This Is Left Fresh as well. I'll be back on Saturday with the music, with the hip hop episode. I have some great segments and topics to talk about as well, discussions and everything. Music, past music, all type of different things like that. You can find me on Saturday around 9 o'clock p.m. I'll send the advertisements and everything else to have you all tapped in on. But yeah, like I said, it's my time. I appreciate you all. We'll be back then on Saturday. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe, share, tell a friend, tell a friend. It's my time left fresh podcast signing out. See you all Saturday.